Guys, welcome to the Lead to the Left podcast, where we discuss important political and social issues facing us today. Now, our focus today is on politics and the effort by both major political parties to appeal to independent voters, some 40% of Americans who are fed up with both the Republicans and the Democrats. Our guest is Adam Brandon, a political bridge builder who is senior advisor at the Independence Center and co-author of a book that's aimed at amplifying the voices of independent voters. Brandon served as president of the libertarian-aligned FreedomWorks, which helped turn the Tea Party into a powerful force until last May when the organization closed. Adam, hey, thanks for joining us today on the Lean to the Left podcast.
Thanks very much for having me. And I appreciated your intro there because there's a lot of stuff to work from in the conversation when you're talking about this rise of independence and my own personal experience with the rise and fall of the Tea Party movement.
Yeah, that's for sure. Tell us about the Independence Center and what you're trying to get done there, pal.
I would love to. I did shut my organization down a year and a half ago. It was the hardest professional thing I've ever done. After spending 20 years of my life, including 10 years as president of the institution, to take a step back and meet with my board and basically say that what we were trying to accomplish, because politics have changed, we're no longer going to be able to accomplish what we had set out to do, was one of the most difficult experiences, humbling experiences of my life.
Yeah.
But I came to this town to work on public policy. I came to Washington, D.C. in the late 90s as a college student, wanting to work on debt and deficit issues. And I remember studying back then being like, oh, geez, my entire future is going to be ruined by an economic catastrophe. And I wanted to do something about it. And after my entire career working in it, I've just came to several lessons, and some of them are about why change is so hard in our political system. And a lot of it comes down to the way that the parties have rigged the system.
Yeah.
And so I looked around and we started doing research, and we found that what I thought independence was, what, 2-3% of the population, maybe 4 on a good day. And that's what I was always taught. But then I realized when I started doing my own research that it was almost half the entire population, particularly millennials and Gen Z, the younger ones, are overwhelmingly the majority are independent. And then demographically, going forward, baby boomers are shrinking as a percentage of the population, and millennials and Gen Z are going to be the plurality of the electorate for the next 20 years. And so it's just obvious to me, this is a generation that actually is more interested in policy than partisan theatrics. And we just had to work with this group. And so I shut down my old organization, and a few new friends that I met along the way. We set up the Independence Center, and the idea is to give a home to political independence. And so we could start being able to offer accountability to the two major parties.
I cannot tell you how many guests I've had on my podcast who have discussed that very thing, that younger voters, Gen Z and others, are just totally tuned out to the major two political parties. And they're looking for someplace else to go. And I think you've got something there with what you're talking about, especially with respect to the change in demographics. People like me, we're going to be kicking the bucket soon. And these younger folks are going to be taking the reins. And the question is, what's that going to look like in the
So
future?
I'm actually really optimistic about this generation and optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
I just picked up another book that I read a few years ago, and it didn't strike me as a very good book, but I just reread it, and it was like a page turner. And it's called, by a guy named Howe, The Fourth Turning is Here. And what was striking about that book is he actually looks at generations like seasons, and every generation has its own season that it was raised in, and then it has its own spin on the world. The millennial spin and the baby boomer spin are completely different based on the environments they grew up in. I remember we just like last week reading an article saying that the millennials are the least patriotic, Generation Z, sorry, is the least patriotic generation in American history. The next one that was least patriotic were the millennials. And everyone is, oh, woe is me, this generation doesn't care. These generations have been raised by baby boomers that from both parties with the constant message that America is going to hell. that America is collapsing. If these Democrats get control, they're going to destroy us. If Republicans get control, they're going to destroy us. And so they've been raised on this diet that from both parties. And so for a lot of them, they look at the world, and if it's hard to be patriotic when both parties are telling you the entire country's collapsing, and you have to trust them, and there's no real track record to trust them. So therefore, it's pretty obvious they go independent. But I think what their patriotism is going to surge back with time because what they want to see is the system working. And right now they look at the two parties as being a major implement to the system working.
Well, what's your strategy for making this all happen going into the 2026
So
elections?
look at this gerrymandering that's going on right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that more today, actually.
And it's going to keep popping up. But I want people to understand this is like an invasive species.
Yeah.
You had your summer lake and you loved it, and all of a sudden some Asian snakehead fish pops in, right? And all of a sudden eats all your critters out, and the environment is permanently changed in that pond. I'm seeing a similar thing here with this gerrymandering, where this is now going to become part of every election cycle, probably. Every few years, we're going to be scrambling for new districts. And that to me is just proof positive that the two parties are in like their death throes. When you have to start going to this level to try and use every trick in the book to hold power, you generally know it's sliding through your hands. And so what we're seeing here is that at the gubernatorial level, Maine, Michigan, California are going to have independents on the ballot for governor. Then you're looking at states like, I know of a bunch, but and some I could just say publicly right now, places like Idaho are going to have a real independent on the ballot for Senate. And I know of multiple who are going to be on the ballot for the House, which means in this upcoming midterm, for the first time, there are going to be independent choices for voters. So that is what's new in this cycle. But our strategy, to be specific, is that if you look at this razor edge that the Congress is on, imagine if just three independents were elected to Congress right now. Who would be the Speaker of the House?
That's true.
Because what would end up happening is those just three members would be able to pick who's the speaker because they would be the very fulcrum the entire body turns on. And so what my theory is in this cycle is if we could get five independents elected, neither the Republican nor the Democratic Party will be able to form the necessary 218 majority, which means independents would then be able to say, okay, we will caucus with one of you, think more like a parliamentarian European type of government.
Right.
But what we would say is, here are the 5 or 6 issues we demand are going to be the first things you're going to take it, you're going to put on the floor. And even if we don't pass, we want votes. And these are things like on immigration. Look, everyone pretty much agrees in America. We need a strong border, yes, but we also need a humane immigration policy where we bring in workers that we need, change the system up so that we have the guest workers that we need. We also have the agriculture workers that we need, and everyone comes out of the shadows. There's areas we can agree on debt and deficits where we need a debt and deficit commission where both parties come together and actually sit in a room and roll their sleeves up. Healthcare, I saw that healthcare premiums on a lot of these exchanges are going to be going up close to 20% next year. I don't think people realize that yet. Healthcare, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, healthcare, we have designed the worst possible system. So those are the types of issues. If independents could just get 3 or 4 or 5 in Congress, you could start forcing votes and actions on issues like that. And then I think something else that should unify all of us. Look, I tend to come from the right, but I think I'm hoping we can start building bridges across politics. All of this power in the executive is not healthy. It is not healthy. It's bad if you've got an all-powerful Republican. It's bad if you've got an all-powerful Democrat. You need Congress to function. And if it doesn't function, the whole system gets out of whack. And yeah, we could talk about the end of democracy all you want if we keep putting all this power into the executive. So that's what we plan to do by re-grabbing control of Congress with just a handful of independents.
That means that those independents, though, they've got to agree to join together to make those
Hang together,
demands.
or they're going to be worthless. They cannot caucus with either party. They have to caucus as a group. But the people we're recruiting, that's the offer we're giving them, is
Okay.
that, look, we want you, we're trying to recruit people who are not in politics. We're trying to recruit people where we basically go to them and say, I know you're mid-career, you're now an anesthesiologist, you're the manager of a car dealership, you're in your mid-career. Can you take 2 to 4 years off? That's it. Don't become a career politician, but can we get some honest, competent people, just as the founders intended, to come just for a couple years, try and do good legislation and get the F out, go back home. That's what we're looking for.
That's what a lot of these young folks that I've talked to tell me they want.
It's exactly
Exactly
what they
that.
want, and they should
Yeah.
get what they want. And I
Yeah.
think that we'll all benefit. Baby boomers and silent generation are going to benefit from this too, because when we have this chaos in our system and the system is out of whack, and where we're putting all this power in the presidency, and federalism, look, I'm really concerned about this National Guard movement that we're doing. You're not supposed to use the National Guard for domestic criminal activity. You're supposed to use them for military fighting forces and hurricanes and things like that.
Exactly.
So when you corrupt the system like that, you're going to get corrupt outcomes.
Yeah.
And so I think young people see this. And I think for everyone who knocks young people for spending all their time on their phones, and a lot of our research, what we've seen is young people really have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And the other thing they have is I call a really high BS meter. So when your old school political tactics come up of, can you imagine this dirtbag gets elected, vote
Right.
blue, vote red. Those ads don't mean a thing to these people anymore because they're like, this is the same old BS you've been selling me since I was a kid. Give me someone real and authentic. And that's what I think is going to end up saving the country. This is a country born out of independent people who are going to be saved by independence. So yeah, I'm really excited when I see this new generation rising up.
Now we have AI coming into play. What are you going to, how is that going to affect what you're doing?
Boy, I don't know yet, but I do know that I think AI, we're living through an era. This is something like the introduction of the steam engine
Yeah.
or fire, the invention of fire. And in my own organization, I can see since we're building it from scratch, we don't have an office. There's a lot of people we have not needed to hire because we could use AI for a lot of these basic research. We're
Sure.
using it for modeling. As I said, how we're recruiting, we're basically building models of independence in these districts, and the model spits out what the ideal candidate looks like, and that helps us understand who to go and recruit. AI is allowing us to do things that even 4 years ago I would never even dreamed of doing. But as a society, I think AI is going to bring up some incredible challenges that for all the time we end up talking about, my God, the fact that we're trying to spend any time talking about flag burning. Hello, the 1990s are calling again.
Mm.
It's just, we should be talking about what AI is going to do to jobs and how we should get ready for this because I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to create whole new sectors of jobs. But guess what? It's going to wipe out a lot of others. And if we go back and look at globalization, I'm from Cleveland. Look, I am actually pro globalization, pro trade. I think that has raised most people's standard of living. However, we didn't do a very good job with a lot of those people who were transitioned, their jobs disappeared due to globalization and NAFTA and the rest of it. And just telling them to go code was a pretty shallow thing to say. So I think we should learn some lessons from that transition and understand with AI, we're going to have another jobs transition here, and maybe we could do this one a little bit better.
Now, is your organization actively supporting financially and with expertise and so on the candidates that you're endorsing, or is it just an endorsement or what?
That's our plan. We are on track to have 1 million members by the end of the year, which is just incredible for us. The signups are going at the independencecenter.org are going really well,
Yeah.
every day. And in fact, you mentioned AI. Probably 10 weeks ago, we had our first sign up come off of ChatGPT. I would say now it's about a third of our total traffic is coming off of AI.
Wow.
So by the end of the year, it'll probably be half. And this is a lot of, and what we're seeing is people who are, I'm saying Googling, right? How outdated is that? People who are going in and they're asking AI where to learn more about independence and it's dropping them off at our doorstep. That's how AI is working right now.
Wow, that's
Um,
amazing.
but the plan is once you get up to close to 1 million people, the idea is we start asking those people, can you chip in $5? And look, if 1 million people chip in $5, and I know it's not as easy as that, but look, then you get 5 million bucks. And then so
Right.
for our candidates to win in the House, we estimate it's going to cost money, about $2 million per race, to do what we need to do to identify and turn out voters. So that's not cheap. $2 million is a lot.
Yeah.
But given that most of these races are running 40, 50, $60 million, $2 million is a bargain compared because we're not running TV ads. We're not going to be doing all the mailers. We're literally going to be using AI to help us find and identify our voters, show them, hey, cut the hot breath off. here, look at this person. This is an incredibly qualified candidate that represents independent voices. And we will follow that person all the way to the ballot box. And for us to win, we're going to need somewhere between 80 and 120,000 voters per district. That's not impossible. That's very doable for us. And so that's what the money would go to. And then the idea here is that because we're recruiting and spending the money on these candidates, the candidate doesn't have to worry about raising money. They can go and just start knocking on doors and shaking people's hands. And then this is the check we have on each other. That candidate will be a check on us, but we'll also be a check on them. So if they decide to go native and go partisan, we could cut them off from this entire community. We'll let the community know Joe Smith, who we thought was a hero, he's actually a dud and is just he just wants his political career. That'll be suicide for that individual because the only way they're going to win is being an authentic person. So this is a good way. This is an entirely new way of trying to do politics. And again, I got to bring this up. And when you advertise, you say you're coming from the left, I'm coming from the right, but we seem to be getting along just fine.
Oh, yeah.
And we disagree on issues. If we have a setting where you and I think are going to share the common goal, like American healthcare sucks, let me talk about things I want to do with markets, and you can talk about things you want to do, and I'm just putting words in your mouth about getting more access for people, and we can find a common ground in between there. And that's what these candidates are going to be designed to do.
That sounds like a great plan. What do you think the chances are that you're going to end up with those 5 or 6?
I left a very well-paid, very stable job, and I have a mortgage and 2 kids. And I put all of it on black on this project. Yes,
Oh,
very
man.
optimistic.
You must be.
I bet my lifestyle on this
Man, I'm
project.
telling you what, I'm wishing you the best of luck on that one. I know what it's like to bet it all on something when it comes to a career.
Yeah, but I think it's like the choice was I could have stayed in my old job and
Sure.
just sworn allegiance to whoever's in charge. Like I've been a free trader all my life. I guess I'm pro tariffs now. That's just not the way I was built.
All right.
Frankly, I think it saved me from probably becoming an alcoholic and just drowning myself in bourbon every day to go to work. Whatever comes, but I believe I'm at the vanguard of a revolution in politics. And anything I could do to speed it up is going to be great. So that's my reward.
Okay, that's great. I wish you the best of luck on that one. Now, what lessons did you learn from your work at FreedomWorks that
Oh, great
applies
question.
to this?
So let's go back to the Tea Party.
All
I was
right.
there at the very beginning. And what I mean by the very beginning is in my office, we created a website called Angry Renter. And the idea was back in the TARP bailouts that we wanted to give renters a voice who were like, hey, we don't own property. We don't own these banks. And now my taxpayer dollars are bailing out these banks and things like that. This is unfair. Then when Rick Santelli did his rant, we're going to throw a tea party here in Chicago and Lake Michigan. We were then able to take that video, hit that list that we did. That was the beginning of the Tea Party movement. And literally, my colleague created something called a Ning site. This is how old this stuff was, where he was putting in information from someone from the north side of Columbus, Ohio, and someone in the south side of Columbus, Ohio, to get them connected. And that became a Tea Party. But remember, the first energy of the Tea Party movement was directed against spending and TARP against George W. Bush. The
Right.
second wave of the Tea Party was against President Obama when we viewed that a lot of his executive orders, which at that point was like, what, 25? Okay, was
Yeah.
an extreme abuse of executive power. And then also Obamacare as an expansion into. So at that point was when the Tea Party was flourishing
Right.
because notice this, we were going after both parties.
Okay. So you
Oh,
just mentioned
here's the
that.
lesson. Here's the lesson. Here's the lesson. And you guys will remember this. Sarah Palin got involved with something called Tea Party Express and turned the Tea Party into a Republican get out the vote operation.
Yeah.
The minute it became that, it went from something potentially special to a zero overnight. And that was because the minute that you become too aligned with either political party, you lose your ability to do something special.
Yeah. All right. So you say that, let's say that you're successful and we end up with some sort of coalition government that you just described. What would that mean to Trump's initiatives today?
Number one, Congress would get repowered. So just take so the boring insider stuff,
Yeah.
you'd claw back congressional power of the purse. So a lot of this is the debate between Congress just rolling over and telling the president you can do what you want. No,
Right.
we're gonna go back to regular order. And so one of the things that's so important to me is remember, everyone talks about regular order. No one does it. We would demand it. And why is that so important? Reg
Explain to the people what regular order is.
Regular order is you go back to Schoolhouse Rock. That is how you would govern. You actually design the system the way it's supposed to. You pass appropriations bills on time. They go to conference with the Senate. They
Right.
then have a conference committee and they come back with a merged bill and then you vote on it.
Okay.
What we have today is something called all these omnibus bills, which empowers a group called the Four Corners. That is the Speaker, the Minority Leader of the House, the Majority Leader of the Senate, the Minority Leader. Those four individuals. And they basically carve up this giant bill and then dump it on the membership. So the problem is going outside of regular order, what you've done is basically rendered the entire body useless. So the whole purpose of a congressman today, the sole purpose of a US congressman today is to get your speaker a majority. That's it. That's it. That's the only power. And once you give the speaker the power, you're pretty much just perfunctory to vote here and there and you're done. By returning to regular order, your individual member would have agency to actually start getting back in the game and offering amendments and being involved in the process, hence bringing our democracy closer back to the people.
Yeah.
So that's why regular order is so important. And that's why it would be a huge check on this imperial presidency that we have created, not just under Trump, but we've been creating this really since World War II. But it really took off under George W. Bush, took off under Obama, took off under Biden, and now we're starting to see it come home to roost with Donald Trump again.
Yeah. You cracked me up when you mentioned that Obama had, what, 25 executive orders?
Right. And I was pissed off.
Yeah, and you were pissed off. Now, how many has Trump had?
We've got to be in triple digits at this point.
Oh, I know.
And by the way, these are pretty dangerous ones.
I know.
Like this whole, and I don't want to over alarm people, but in no way, no how, I don't care if it's Jesus Christ as president of the United States. President Jesus should not have access to a personal National Guard unit under no circumstances.
Yeah.
You cannot trust that much power with the executive.
Yeah.
That's what the Roman emperors had. They had their own private military guards.
Yeah.
And that is just not something we do. That is not American. And me being a good Tea Partier who resists centralization, that just scares me that the executive order, we're creating that. And so there's things like that the new Congress would have to get back in check.
I'm surprised actually that these executive orders haven't been challenged on constitutional grounds because they infringe on the responsibilities of the legislature.
I'm stunned. I think it's also, if you look at the strategy is, you've probably heard, flood the zone with poop. I'll use the clean version of it. And I think with just being hit with so many, people are just knocked off guard.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. And I look at Republicans, I talk to Republican sitting members and they are mortified of what's happening right now. Yeah. And then my response is do something about it. And they're like, yeah. I don't want a primary challenger. And right. It's better for us if I'm here than not here. And it's okay. Real quick, can you imagine trying to write that book, Profiles in Courage, today in Washington?
Yeah.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of books, tell us about the one you're working on.
It's called The Exhausted Majority. My original title that I loved was called The Most Important Election of Our Lifetime, Trademark. Although I couldn't put trademark on the front of the book, so that's why I had to change the title. But the point of it was the reason I called it The Most Important Election of Our Lifetime is that we've gotten into this cycle where every election is the most important election and everything is existential. Politics should be boring. It should not be existential.
Yeah.
And I don't like all these war analogies because these are our fellow citizens. And guess what? It's getting a little too warlike out there right now. The fact that we've had those Minnesota state house members that were shot and killed, and it was like one day in the news, that should not be normalized at all.
That's right.
Violence in our political system should not be normalized. And so I think that's a derivative of this most important election of our lifetime. And the politicians need to keep scaring you into this to keep you voting for them. So we changed the title to The Exhausted Majority because that's what we believe America is. The majority of Americans are not violent. The majority of Americans, if they have different political opinions, they don't hate each other. The majority of Americans want, even if they, again, what they want to see is hard-fought compromise. That doesn't necessarily sacrifice your principles, but it finds by a battle, by a political debate, actually being in a room and arguing, you find, okay, maybe there are some areas we agree upon, and that consensus is where governance happens. And so That's what this book is about. It's about that if you're concerned about the future of your country and you think you're independent, you are the sleeping giant that I see that will save this country and bring it back from the fringes. And the book shows a lot of details about where this group is, what they believe in, and basically the strategy I just laid out for you on if this group comes together, there's only 20 swing districts left in the country, only 20. We could take all 20 of those districts. And if independents owned those 20 districts, it would be a different country overnight.
Adam, do you have a co-author with us on this book? I thought
I
read
do.
yours.
My mentor. There's an old saying, don't meet your mentor, you'll be disappointed. I actually was just looking at my acknowledgments the other night, and my co-author is Ed Crane, the founder of the Cato Institute, one of the godfathers of the libertarian movement. And he has been he's deep into retirement now, but he's been incredibly kind. And I've spent a lot of time at his house where he sat in his lazy chair and we've just talked. And he has been a lifelong believer that this movement would come, that would finally start giving choice to the Americans beyond Republicans and Democrats. And so he's been an incredible mentor to me and very helpful for this whole project.
Okay, so the title of the book will be
The Exhausted Majority.
Okay, and which, by the way, is a great title. And when will it be out?
I think it's going to be out right before Christmas, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm being told. I've got some pretty fun people. Former Meet the Press host Chuck Todd's given a blurb.
Good.
A couple of my other people I've really respected throughout time, different members of Congress, all that. So I'm really pleased when I start seeing who's coming back and saying, yeah, I'd love to support you in this effort of trying to empower independent voters.
Yeah. All right. That's cool. All right. Got anything else you'd like to add?
We're not here to talk about Cleveland Browns football, but that's always in my mind, and it's generally a bad thing.
All right, Adam. Listen, pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Really enjoyed it. Take care.
Hey, guys. I'm Bob Gatty, founder and host of Lean to the Left. I'm excited to share our new book, Hijacked Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness, co-authored with political analyst and professor C.J. Waldron. In Hijacked Nation, we delve into the unfolding story of America's political landscape through a series of essays from leantotheleft.net. We explore how Donald Trump's presidency has transformed American politics, challenging our values and institutions. Hijacked Nation isn't just a book, it's a call to action. It invites you to reflect on what it means to be American in a divided political landscape. Together we can reclaim our nation's greatness. So get your copy of Hijacked Nation today. Visit leantotheleft.net and click on the Books tab to learn more and to order.